The stars above New Eden had never looked so crowded. And for good reason. 12,000 alien warships now filled the space where only peaceful trading vessels had flown before, their massive hulls blocking out the light of distant suns like a wall of metal and malice stretching across the void. Fleet Commander Verthax of the Crethan Hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the holographic display with all four of his arms clasped behind his back in a gesture of supreme confidence. His scaled face twisted into what his species considered a smile, though to humans it would have looked like the grin of a predator about to feast. Status report, he commanded, his voice echoing through the massive chamber where dozens of officers worked at their stations. All 17 Dominion fleets have achieved formation. Supreme Commander, his second officer replied, a Cassari female named Vexira, whose reptilian eyes gleamed with anticipation. The humans have been sent our ultimatum. They have one standard cycle to accept protectorate status or face complete annihilation. Verthax let out a rumbling laugh that shook his barrel chest. Protectorate status, such a polite term for what we truly mean, he said, turning to face the assembled officers from the various Dominion species who had gathered on his bridge as observers. Tell me, Ambassador Kethron, do you think the humans understand what we are really offering them? The tall, insectoid ambassador from the Vrexo Collective clicked his mandibles in amusement. They understand perfectly. Commander, we offer them the choice between slavery and death. And we all know which option the Y species chooses. Laughter rippled through the bridge. A chorus of clicks and growls and hisses from a dozen different species united in their contempt for humanity. For 2 centuries, humans had been the joke of the galactic community, a young species that had stumbled into faster-than-light travel almost by accident, spreading to a handful of colony worlds while the great powers watched with mild amusement. They were considered primitive, emotional, and far too attached to strange concepts like individual rights and democratic governance. The Conclave of 17 Dominions had tolerated humanity's existence because they seemed harmless, even useful as a source of cheap labor and novel entertainment. Human music and art had become fashionable among certain alien aristocrats, and human workers were known for their strange willingness to perform tasks that other species considered beneath them. But then, humanity had done something unforgivable. They had discovered a new sector of space rich with resources, and they had refused to share the coordinates with the Dominions. When pressed, their ambassadors had smiled their strange soft smiles and talked about sovereign rights and fair negotiation. The Dominions did not negotiate with lesser species, and so the Armada had gathered, the largest military force assembled in 300 years, all to crush a species that barely had 100 warships to its name. Commander, we are detecting a fold space emergence at the edge of the system, a sensor officer announced, his voice carrying a hint of excitement. It appears to be the human response fleet. Verthax turned to the main display, his eyes narrowing as the signatures resolved into clarity. For a moment he simply stared, certain there had been some mistake. How many ships? He asked quietly. 17, Commander, the officer replied, confusion evident in his tone. Just 17 vessels. Silence fell across the bridge, and then the laughter began. It started with Ambassador Kethron, a clicking wheeze that built into a full chittering roar. Then Vexira joined in with her hissing cackle, and soon the entire bridge was filled with the sounds of alien mirth. 17. Verthax finally managed to say between his own rumbling laughs. They send 17 ships against 12,000. Have they gone mad, or have they simply accepted their fate? Perhaps they miscounted, Vexira suggested, wiping moisture from her scaled cheeks. Or perhaps this is some form of human humor that we do not understand. Shall the First order the fleet to power weapons, Commander? The tactical officer asked. Though even he was struggling to maintain composure, Verthax waved a dismissive hand. Why waste the energy? Let them approach. Let them see the full might of what they face. Perhaps when they witness our armada up close, they will fall to their knees and beg for the mercy they rejected. Across the void, Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance and watched the alien armada grow larger on her display. She was a small woman by human standards, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with the weight of 60 years and countless battles fought in shadows around her. The bridge crew worked in perfect silence. No nervous chatter, no fearful glances. Just the calm efficiency of warriors who knew exactly what was about to happen. Admiral, the alien fleet is not powering weapons, Commander Chun reported from the tactical station. They appear to be holding position. Of course they are, Tanaka replied, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the bridge. They think this is a surrender fleet. They think we have come to kneel. She walked slowly to the center of the bridge, her boots clicking against the deck plating. Around her, 17 displays showed the bridges of her other ships, their captains watching her with steady eyes. 200 years, she said, more to herself than anyone else. For 200 years we have smiled while they mocked us, bowed while they stole from us, retreated while they threatened our children. We have played the role of the weak and foolish newcomers, because our grandparents believed that patience would bring peace. She turned to face her crew. Our grandparents were wrong. Peace does not come from patience. Peace comes from strength. And today we show the galaxy what human strength truly looks like. Her hand moved to the command panel. All ships, begin Protocol Prometheus Authorization Tanaka 77 Omega. Across 17 bridges, officers entered codes that had waited decades for this moment. Deep within each ship, systems that had never been activated outside of simulation began to wake. Protocol Prometheus confirmed, Commander Chun announced, his voice tight with controlled emotion. All ships report ready. Tanaka looked once more at the wall of alien warships that filled her display. 12,000 vessels crewed by millions of beings who had come to enslave her people, who had laughed at the 17 ships humanity had sent to defend its children. She allowed herself a small, cold smile. Let them laugh, she whispered. They will not laugh for long. The transformation began. Junior Technician Yevanel had been monitoring sensor readings for the Cassari science vessel Illuminate for 3 years. And in all that time, she had never seen her instruments behave the way they were behaving now. It started small, just a flicker on her energy detection array. A brief spike that she assumed was a calibration error. She tapped the screen twice and ran a quick diagnostic. Expecting the numbers to settle back into normal ranges, they did not settle instead. They climbed higher. That cannot be right, she muttered to herself, her clawed fingers dancing across the control panel as she tried different filters and scanning frequencies. The human ships were still holding position at the edge of the system, their tiny forms barely visible among the massive dominion vessels that surrounded them, and yet her instruments insisted that something extraordinary was happening inside those small hulls. The energy readings jumped again. And this time, Yovenel felt the first cold touch of fear in her stomach. She opened a channel to her superior, Senior Analyst Korth, who was stationed on the main science deck 2 levels above. Sir, I am detecting anomalous readings from the human vessel's energy signatures that exceed baseline parameters by a significant margin. How significant? Korth's voice came back. Sounding bored and slightly annoyed at the interruption, Yevel checked her numbers 3 times before answering. The readings have exceeded our maximum detection thresholds. Sir, the instruments are no longer able to provide accurate measurements. There was a pause. That is impossible. Technician, our sensors can detect energy output from a star. Are you suggesting these 17 human vessels are producing more power than a star? I am not suggesting anything, sir, Yevenel replied, her voice trembling slightly. I am simply reporting what my instruments are showing me. Run a full diagnostic on your equipment. Clearly there is a malfunction. Yevonil had already run 3 diagnostics. She ran a 4th anyway, and when the results came back clean, she felt her scales tighten with genuine terror. Sir, the diagnostics confirm all equipment is functioning within normal parameters. The readings are accurate. This time, the pause stretched longer. When Korth spoke again, his voice had lost its boredom. I am seeing the same readings on my station. Now, this makes no sense. What are those ships doing? Across the Dominion Armada, similar conversations were happening on hundreds of vessels. Sensor officers who had been idly watching what they assumed would be a simple intimidation exercise were now staring at their screens with growing alarm as numbers climbed into ranges that should not have been possible on the bridge of the Eternal Dominance. Commander Verthax noticed that the laughter had stopped. His officers were no longer joking about the tiny human fleet. They were staring at their displays with expressions that ranged from confusion to outright fear. What is happening? He demanded, striding to the tactical station where Vexira stood frozen before a cascade of warning indicators. I do not know. Commander, she admitted, and Verthax felt a chill at hearing uncertainty in the voice of his most experienced officer. The human vessels are producing energy readings that our systems cannot properly measure every time we recalibrate to accommodate the new levels. The readings climb higher still. That is impossible. No vessel that size could contain such power. Look for yourself. Commander, Verthax looked at the display, and for the first time in his long military career, he felt the cold grip of doubt wrap around his heart. The teeth. 17 human ships were glowing now, not with engine light or weapon charge, but with a strange luminescence that seemed to come from within their hulls. As he watched, hairline cracks appeared across their surfaces, spreading like veins of light across dark skin. They are breaking apart, Ambassador Catherine said from behind him, his earlier amusement completely gone. Their ships are falling to pieces, perhaps. They have overloaded their reactors in some desperate suicide attempt. But even as he spoke, it became clear that the human ships were not breaking. They were opening, the hulls split along precise lines, folding outward like flower petals greeting the sun. Internal structures that had been compressed and hidden began to expand, unfolding in patterns of impossible complexity that made Verthax's hard to follow. The ship that had been a modest 300 meters long was now growing, stretching, becoming something far larger and far more terrifying. Weapon arrays emerged from hidden compartments, each one crackling with energies that the Dominion tactical computers could not identify. Drive systems pulsed with light that seemed to bend the very fabric of space around them. By the ancient gods, Vexira whispered, her voice barely audible over the alarm klaxons that had begun to wail across the bridge. They have been hiding all this time. They have been hiding what they truly are. Commander, Verthax watched as the 17 small vessels completed their transformation into 17 massive warships, each one bristling with technology that the combined science divisions of the Dominions could not comprehend. The readings on his display had stopped climbing, not because the energy output had stabilized, but because his sensors had burned out entirely from the overload. Get me a visual, he commanded, his voice hoarse. Full magnification on the lead vessel. The main screen flickered, and then the UES Defiance filled the display, no longer the modest frigate that had emerged from fold space, but a 3-kilometer behemoth of gleaming metal and pulsing light. Its hull was covered in weapon systems of every imaginable type, and some that imagination could not begin to grasp, and on its bow, painted in letters 10 meters tall, was a single word in the human language that Verthax had never bothered to learn, but which his translator now rendered for him with terrible clarity. Defiance, Commander, his communications officer called out, his voice cracking with fear. We are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Verthax straightened his spine, trying to reclaim some measure of his earlier confidence. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen was human, an older female with gray-streaked hair and dark eyes that held no warmth, no fear, and no mercy. She looked at the camera as if she could see through it to every bridge in the Armada, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries of hidden rage. "You came here to threaten our children," she said, each word falling like a hammer blow. "You came expecting to find sheep cowering before wolves." Her lips curved into a smile that made Verthak's stiff blood run cold. "You found wolves, but we are not the prey." The transmission ended, and silence filled the bridge of the eternal dominance. The silence of predators, who had just realized they were standing in the den of something far more dangerous than themselves. "Power all weapons," Verthax commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. Power all weapons now. But even as his crew scrambled to obey, he knew in his heart that it was already too late. The readings had turned red, and there was no going back. Admiral Yuki Tanaka watched the transformation complete with a sense of grim satisfaction that she had waited her entire life to feel. Around her, the bridge of the Defiance had expanded to 3 times its original size, revealing command stations and tactical systems that had been hidden behind false walls and compressed storage compartments. "All ships report transformation complete," Commander Chen announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had just revealed. "Weapon systems online, drive cores at full power, all crews standing by for orders." Tanaka nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the display that showed the alien armada in all its supposed glory. 12,000 ships that had come to enslave her people, crewed by beings who had spent 2 centuries treating humanity as a joke, a curiosity, a species too primitive and too weak to deserve respect. They were not laughing anymore. "Open a channel to all commands," she ordered. "I want our people to know what we are doing here today, and why." The channel opened, and Tanaka knew that her words were being heard not only by the 17,000 humans serving in her fleet, but also by the monitoring stations on New Eden below, and the communication relays that would carry her message to every human world. 200 years ago, our ancestors first made contact with alien life, she began, her voice carrying the weight of history. They came to that meeting with hope in their hearts, hope that the universe would be filled with friends and partners, hope that humanity would find its place among the stars as equals in a community of civilizations. She paused, letting the words settle. That hope was betrayed, not quickly, not obviously, but slowly, steadily, with 1,000 small humiliations and 1,000,000 quiet insults. Our diplomats were mocked in their councils. Our traders were cheated in their markets. Our colonies were raided by pirates that the Dominions could have stopped but chose to ignore. And through it all, we smiled. We smiled and bowed and retreated. Because our leaders believed that patience and goodwill would eventually earn us the respect we deserved. They believed that if we just endured long enough, the galaxy would see our worth. Her jaw tightened. They were wrong. The galaxy does not respect patience. It does not reward goodwill. The galaxy respects only one thing, and that is power. She turned to face the visual pickup, knowing that her face was now being broadcast to 12,000 alien bridges as well. For 200 years, we have hidden our true strength. We have built in secret, developed in shadow, and waited for the day when hiding would no longer be possible. That day has come. The technology you see before you is not new. It is the work of 8 generations of human scientists and engineers, building and improving and perfecting in underground facilities on dead moons and inside hollowed asteroids. Every ship the Dominions mocked, every vessel they dismissed as primitive, carried within it the seeds of what you now witness. We learned from every species we encountered. We studied your weapons and improved them. We analyzed your drives and made them faster. We examined your shields and made them stronger. You gave us access to your technology because you thought we were too stupid to understand it. And we let you believe that because it served our purpose." Her smile returned, cold and sharp as a blade. "You called us children. We are not children. You called us weak. We are not weak. You called us prey. We have never been prey. We are humanity. And we have been waiting for this moment for 200 years, on the bridge of the eternal dominance." Commander Verthax listened to the human admiral's words with growing horror. Everything she said matched the intelligence reports he had dismissed as paranoid. Fantasy reports of unexplained energy readings near human colonies, of ships that disappeared from tracking for days at a time, of research facilities hidden in places no sensor could reach. "She is bluffing," Ambassador Kethron insisted, though his mandibles were clicking with nervous energy. "This is theater. Nothing more. No species could hide such capabilities from the combined intelligence networks of 17 dominions. Look at the readings," Vexira replied, her voice flat with shock. "Look at what those ships are producing. Does that look like theater to you?" The human admiral was still speaking. "You have 90 seconds to begin emergency retreat," she announced. And now her voice carried no emotion at all. Just the cold certainty of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. "After that time has passed, we will demonstrate exactly what happens when you threaten humanity's children. 90 seconds, that is your final warning." Countdown appeared on every display in the Armada, bright red numbers ticking down from 90 with merciless precision. "She cannot be serious." Verthax growled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Attack all ships. Focus fire on the human flagship." "Commander, we cannot achieve weapons lock," the tactical officer reported, fear cracking his voice. "The targeting computers are unable to track the human vessels. They are moving in patterns our systems cannot predict." Verthax looked at the display and felt his stomach clench with primal terror. The human ships were not moving like any vessel he had ever seen. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, appearing in one location and then another without crossing the space between. It was as if they existed in multiple places at once, or perhaps in no place at all. How is that possible? Ambassador Kethron demanded. "No species has ever achieved such propulsion. The physics alone should be impossible. The humans did not solve faster than light travel the way we did," Vexira said slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "They found a different solution. They do not bend space. They step outside of it entirely. What does that mean?" "It means," Vexira replied, her voice hollow, "that we cannot touch them, but they can touch us." The countdown continued. 70 seconds. 65-60 across the Armada. Captains were making desperate decisions. Some tried to charge their fold space drives for emergency retreat, but the process required time they might not have. Others attempted to fire their weapons anyway, launching plasma bolts and kinetic rounds at targets that simply were not there when the weapons arrived. Verthax watched as the proud Dominion fleet began to crack, discipline breaking down as ship after ship broke formation and tried to flee. He wanted to scream at them, to remind them that they outnumbered the humans 700 to 1, to insist that no force in the universe could stand against the combined might of the 17 dominions. But the words would not come, because deep in his warrior's heart, in the place where instinct spoke louder than pride, Commander Verthax knew the truth. The humans have never been prey. They have been predators all along, predators who had chosen to wear the skin of sheep until the moment when the sheep's clothing no longer served their purpose, and now the wolves were revealed. The countdown reached 45 seconds, and Verthax made his decision. "All ships," he commanded, his voice breaking with the weight of absolute defeat. "Emergency retreat, scatter pattern Omega. Get as many vessels into fold space as possible." It was the first retreat in the history of the Crethan hegemony. It would not be the last. The countdown continued, and across the alien armada, Chaos reigned as 12,000 warships tried to escape the trap they had walked into so confidently just hours before. 30 seconds. 2010 Admiral Tanaka watched the countdown reach zero, and her expression did not change. "All ships," she said calmly. "Execute Protocol Prometheus Phase 2. The wolves began to hunt." The first ship to die was a Vrexel destroyer called the Mandible of Justice. One moment, it was there. A proud vessel of 300 meters, bristling with weapons that had conquered a dozen worlds. And the next moment, it simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no flash of energy, no debris field left behind. The ship was there. And then it was not, as if reality itself had decided that the Mandible of Justice no longer had permission to exist. Captain Vrexler of the Mandible's sister ship watched the disappearance happen on his sensor display and felt his compound eyes go wide with a terror that his species had not experienced. In 10,000 years of galactic dominance, what happened? He screamed at his bridge crew. "Where did the Mandible go?" "Unknown, Captain," his sensor officer replied, his voice trembling with fear. "The vessel has been completely removed from all scanning frequencies. There is no wreckage, no energy signature, no indication that it ever existed. That is not possible. 3,000 crew members cannot simply vanish." But even as he spoke, 3 more Vrexel vessels suffered the same fake one heartbeat. They were real, solid, filled with living beings who had families and dreams and futures. And the next heartbeat, they were nothing but memory. Across the Armada, similar scenes of horror unfolded as the human ships moved through the Dominion fleet like predators through a herd of helpless prey. The UE's Defiance appeared in the center of a cassowary battle group, its hull shimmering with energies that made sensors scream and targeting computers fail. The cassowary ships opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons and missile batteries and kinetic accelerators, all unleashing their fury at the vessel that had dared to challenge the mightiest military force in galactic history. Every shot missed, not because the gunners were incompetent, but because the Defiance simply was not where it appeared to be. It existed in a state between locations, present and absent simultaneously, occupying space in a way that made conventional physics meaningless. And then the Defiance moved. It did not accelerate in any direction. It did not turn or bank or maneuver. It simply stopped existing in one place and started existing in another, trailing a wake of distorted space-time that tore through the cassowary formation. Like a blade through soft tissue, ships that touched that wake came apart at the molecular level. Their hulls did not rupture or explode. They dissolved, the bonds between atoms simply ceasing to function, as if someone had turned off the fundamental forces that held matter together. Commander Vothax watched the destruction from the bridge of the eternal dominance and felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of military service. Absolute helplessness. His weapons could not target the human ships. His shields could not stop whatever it was they were doing. His engines could not outrun opponents who moved outside of normal space entirely. Fold space drive status, he demanded, knowing that escape was the only option left. 30 seconds to full charge. Commander, the engineering officer replied, but at current destruction rates, we may not have 30 seconds around them. The Dominion fleet was dying not in a battle, not in a fight, but in a slaughter that made every previous military engagement in galactic history look like children playing with toys. Crethan Dreadnought Eternal Fury tried to ram one of the human vessels, its captain choosing a warrior's death over the helpless annihilation that claimed so many of his comrades. The Fury accelerated to full combat speed, its massive hull aimed directly at the human cruiser UES Vengeance, and passed through empty space as the Vengeance simply stepped aside without moving, existing somewhere else for the brief moment when collision would have occurred. the Fury emerged from the failed ram to find itself surrounded by 3 human vessels. It lasted less than a second before ceasing to exist on the bridge of the Defiance. Admiral Tanaka watched the tactical display with an expression of cold focus. There was no joy in what she was doing, no satisfaction in the destruction she was unleashing. There was only the grim necessity of a leader who had to make certain that the lesson being taught today would never need to be taught again. Admiral, approximately 3,000 Dominion vessels have successfully initiated fold space retreat, Commander Chen reported. The remainder are either attempting to flee or have been neutralized. Continue engagement, Tanaka ordered. No vessel that fired upon us leaves this system. No vessel that refused the 90 seconds we offered. Understood. Admiral, the human fleet continued its terrible work, moving through the remaining Dominion ships with methodical precision. Each human vessel seemed to know exactly where to be and when to be there, coordinating without visible communication, in a dance of destruction that the most advanced alien tactical computers could not comprehend. Some Dominion captains tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas for mercy on all frequencies. Admiral Tanaka allowed those vessels to power down their weapons and withdraw from the engagement zone. Though she marked their signatures for later review, others tried to fight to the end, launching final desperate attacks that achieved nothing except confirming their own destruction. These ships Tanaka eliminated without hesitation or regret. They had chosen their fate when they laughed at humanity's tiny fleet. The eternal dominance finally achieved. Fold space capability just as 2 human vessels bracketed its position. Commander Vothax felt reality twist around him as his ship punched a hole through dimensional barriers and fled into the strange void between normal spaces. Last image of the battle was the face of Admiral Tanaka, appearing on his screen for just a moment before the fold space transition completed. She was looking directly at him, and though she said nothing, her eyes spoke volumes. We are letting you live so you can tell the others what happened here. Those eyes said, we are letting you live so the galaxy knows what comes for anyone who threatens humanity again. Remember this day, Commander. Remember it well. Then the eternal dominance was gone, fleeing through dimensions that human science had learned to navigate generations ago, running from a battle that had never really been a battle at all behind him. The destruction continued for another 2 minutes and 37 seconds. When it finally stopped, the space above New Eden was empty except for 17 human vessels and the scattered atoms of 9,000 Dominion warships that had ceased to exist as anything more than expanding clouds of basic elements. Admiral Tanaka looked at the empty display and allowed herself one deep breath. Secure from combat operations, she ordered. All ships return to standard configuration. Begin search and rescue for any surviving Dominion personnel. We are not monsters, and we will not let even our enemies die in the cold of space if we can prevent it. Understood, Admiral, Commander Chen replied. Should I prepare a message for transmission to Earth? Tanaka shook her head slowly. Not to Earth, she said. Prepare a message for transmission to every inhabited system in the galaxy. It is time for humanity to introduce itself properly. Her eyes hardened. It is time for the wolves to speak. The survivors would struggle for generations to describe what they had witnessed above New Eden, and their accounts would become legends whispered in fear across 10,000 worlds. Commander Vothax returned to the Crethan homeworld 3 days after the battle that was not a battle, and when he stood before the High Council to deliver his report, his hands trembled so badly that he could not hold his ceremonial blade. They did not defeat us, he told the assembled leaders, his voice hollow with trauma. Defeat implies a contest. What happened above New Eden was not a contest. It was an execution performed by beings who had absolute power and complete restraint. Explain yourself, Commander, the High Counselor demanded. How can 17 vessels destroy 9,000 of our finest warships? They do not move through space the way we do. Counselor, they exist outside of it, stepping between points without crossing the distance between. They cannot be targeted, cannot be tracked, cannot be touched by any weapon in our arsenal. Verthax looked up, and the council saw something in his eyes that they had never seen in a Crethan warrior before. Genuine terror. We have been playing at war for 1,000 years, he said. The humans have been preparing for extermination, theirs or ours, and they prepared far better than we could have imagined. Similar scenes played out across the territories of all 17 dominions as the survivors returned home with their impossible stories. At first, many leaders refused to believe the reports, insisting that there had been some mistake, some malfunction, some trick that explained the inexplicable defeat. Then, Admiral Tanaka's message arrived. It came simultaneously to every communication relay in the galaxy, breaking through encryptions and bypassing filters as if the security systems of 1,000 civilizations simply did not exist. On every screen, on every display, on every device capable of receiving a signal, the face of a human female appeared. She looked tired. Varthax thought as he watched the message from his quarters on the homeworld. Not triumphant, not gloating, not proud, just tired. Like someone who had been carrying a weight for a very long time and was finally setting it down. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying across light years through technologies that alien scientists would spend decades trying to understand. My name is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Fleet, and I am addressing you on behalf of humanity. For 200 years, our species has lived among you as newcomers, as outsiders, as what many of you called primitives, barely worthy of notice. We accepted that role because our leaders hoped that patience and good faith would earn us a place in your community as equals. That hope died 3 days ago above New Eden. Her expression hardened when 12,000 warships gathered to enslave our children. When the conclave of 17 dominions came to strip us of our freedom and reduce our people to servants, you made it clear that patience and good faith mean nothing to you. You understand only power, only strength, only the threat of annihilation. Very well, we will speak to you in the only language you respect. The image shifted to show tactical recordings from the battle. Dominion ships vanishing into nothing. Human vessels moving in ways that violated every known law of physics. 9,000 warships reduced to atoms in less than 4 minutes. This is what human strength looks like. Tanaka continued as the images played. This is what we have built in 2 centuries of hidden development. This is what waits for any species, any empire, any coalition that threatens human lives, human worlds, or human children. We did not want this. We wanted to be your partners, your friends, your allies in exploring a universe that holds wonders beyond counting. We wanted to share what we have learned and learn from what you know. We wanted peace, but you taught us that peace is not given, it is taken. You taught us that respect is not earned through kindness, it is demanded through power. You taught us that the only way to protect the ones we love is to be so dangerous that attacking them becomes unthinkable. We have learned that lesson well. Her voice softened slightly. I want to be clear about what this message means. Humanity is not declaring war on the galaxy. We are not interested in conquest, in empire, in ruling over species that would rather rule themselves. We ask only to be left in peace, to pursue our own destiny among the stars without interference. But let me also be clear about what will happen if that peace is broken. The tactical recordings vanished, replaced by a single image, 17 human vessels floating in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with power that sensors across the galaxy could detect even through the recording. We have 17 of these ships, Tanaka said. 17 vessels that destroyed 9,000 of your best warships without suffering a single casualty. 17 vessels that represent technology you cannot counter, cannot understand, and cannot survive. And we have more. The image shifted again to show shipyards' massive construction facilities, hidden in asteroid fields and orbiting dead stars. Building vessels that made the 17 seem small by comparison. Much more. We are not children anymore. Tanaka concluded. We are not prey. We are not the weak and foolish newcomers that you have been mocking and exploiting for 2 centuries. We are humanity. And we are done hiding. From this day forward, any species that lives in peace with us will find no better friend in the universe. We will trade fairly, negotiate honestly, and defend those who cannot defend themselves. But any species that raises a hand against us will learn what the Dominion fleet learned above New Eden. You will learn that the wolves you thought were sheep have teeth sharp enough to end worlds. This is not a threat. It is a promise. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, a profound silence fell in the halls of the Crethan High Council. No one spoke. In the hive chambers of the Vregzil Collective, mandibles hung slack with shock. In every seat of power where leaders had once laughed at humanity's weakness, cold fear replaced ancient arrogance. Commander Verthax watched the blank screen where Tanaka's face had been and thought about the laughing officers on his bridge, about the confident predictions of easy victory, about the certainty that had filled the Armada as it gathered to crush a species it considered beneath contempt. We were fools, he said to no one in particular. Fools who never thought to ask why a species would hide its strength for 200 years. He knew the answer now. Humanity had hidden because they wanted to believe the galaxy could be better. They had given every other species 2 centuries to prove that peaceful coexistence was possible. 2 centuries to treat them with basic respect and dignity. 2 centuries to choose friendship over dominion. And when the dominions chose violence instead, when they gathered their armada and came to enslave human children, humanity had made its own choice. They had chosen to show the galaxy what happened when you threatened the wrong species in the months that followed. The 17 vessels of the United Earth Fleet took up permanent patrol along the borders of human space. Occasionally, Dominion scouts would venture close enough to observe them, and the readings they brought back confirmed what every censor officer in the galaxy had come to fear. The human ships were real. Their power was real. The threat they represented was very, very real. No one laughed at humanity anymore. No one dared. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, where species that had suffered under Dominion rule for centuries heard whispers of what had happened above New Eden, a new emotion began to spread. Not fear, but something far more dangerous to the old order. Hope that maybe the universe was not as cruel as it had seemed. Hope that power did not always win. Hope that somewhere among the stars there was a species strong enough to protect the weak and brave enough to stand against tyranny. Hope that the wolves were watching and would continue to watch for a very, very long time. The Red Dawn had come, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same.